Get to the news. We're following new developments in the Justice Department investigation of Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. NBC News has learned that Joel Greenberg, a former Florida tax official and associate of Gaetz, is expected to plead guilty in the criminal case that spawned the sex trafficking investigation into the congressman. The New York Times points out that this could be an indication that Greenberg is likely to cooperate as a key witness against Gaetz. Investigators are said to be examining their involvement with women who were recruited online for sex and given cash payments, as well as whether Congressman Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old. Gaetz, who has not been charged with any crime, has repeatedly denied wrongdoing. An attorney who represents Joel Greenberg spoke to reporters after a status hearing yesterday. Listen to what he said when asked about Matt Gaetz.
Does Matt Gaetz have anything to worry about?
Does Matt Gaetz? That is such a...
when it comes to what happened today in court.
Does he have anything to worry about? I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today.
Yeah, you know, up until now, John Heilman, all we had were stories from the newspaper. We'd a lot of information, but nothing from the principals here, the people who actually knew what was going on. So we weren't even at an innocent until proven guilty stage. We were just hearing second and third hand from some great reporting, but had not heard from any of the principals of the case. Yesterday, really, well, first of all, you could tell because he was working with the state, there was going to be a plea deal. You knew where this was going. But then for the tax collector's attorney to come out and say that really does more than just strongly suggest that they're cooperating with the state. And as his attorney says, that the congressman has something to worry about.
Yeah, Joe. First of all, happy birthday. That's it's still a little befuddling to me that that you're at work at 6 a.m. on your birthday. But I guess the celebrations will start later today. And I do think it's a little bit like this. That the worst thing that you don't want to hear when you're ensnared in a potential sex trafficking case is your friend, the indicted for sex trafficking friend of yours, their attorney, his attorney coming out and saying that you have some things to be concerned about. I mean, I think it's maybe the worst possible thing you could hear in these circumstances. And it's, as you're building a case like this, there are a lot, as you just said a second ago, we heard a lot of reporting. We hadn't heard from any material witnesses, but we've skipped over material witnesses now and gone straight to the heart of the case. If there's anybody we know about right now who has the capacity to flip on Matt Gaetz in a devastating way, it is this guy who is the indicted sex trafficker. And so we're now in the room where it happened, so to speak, and getting the strongest emanations possible that in fact that there is something to talk about. And that the guy who has the thing to talk about is going to talk about it. And I can't imagine but that yesterday was maybe the worst day in Matt Gaetz's life. I would have thought. There may be worse days ahead, but yesterday was probably pretty bad.
Let's bring in the New York Times reporter who's been on this story right from the beginning, Michael Schmidt, also an MSNBC national security analyst. Mike, good morning. So bring us up to speed here on Joel Greenberg and this plea deal. His attorney there making it pretty clear that Joel Greenberg may be flipping on his buddy Matt Gaetz here.
Yeah, as you guys were pointing out, Fritz Scheller, the lawyer who made those statements, is a longtime Florida attorney. He represented the wife of the Pulse nightclub shooter who was indicted on terrorism charges and actually went to trial against the government to fight them and won. And whatever folks, on the left or the right think of, a lawyer like that, he's not going to go out and say that and not know the message that he is sending. Clearly, that is a message directly to the public and to the government and to Matt Gaetz about the direction of where this is headed, about, you know, what his client is willing to do. Because you have to remember, Joel Greenberg is someone that we, you know, certainly in the national media and the national, you know, anyone following politics had no idea was up until about 10 days ago. But Joel Greenberg faces an enormous amount of time in prison for a range of charges, including sex trafficking, that he has been indicted on. And the only way that he can bring that number down is to provide cooperation to the government, to help their investigation, to help them lead to other prosecutions. And obviously, Gaetz is the biggest fish that we know of, certainly, in this investigation. And often, whatever, you know, these investigations can be very successful. They can get a lot of people to plead guilty. They can go to trial and win. But if in the end the government were to, let's say, charge Gaetz and lose that case, that is what the public will remember. So the government wants to have as many witnesses as possible as it moves forward here. And what this lawyer is trying to do is position his client to benefit the most from cooperating.
Well, and Michael, based on sources I spoke with yesterday in Florida, there may be more than one person testifying against the congressman. The Department of Justice has notified several people that they are of interest in this case. So is it possible you may have several parties that were involved in these events that the congressman and the tax collector went to, who are now, especially if they were responsible for transporting the 17-year-old, or being a part of that and being there while the 17-year-old is being transported? There are several other people who are going to be wanting to get deals from the feds as well, right?
There are obviously lots of problems when you're investigated by the government. But one of them is that typically, if you're a high-profile person, a range of conduct that you've done gets examined. The government gets in, they start looking at your phone records, they start looking at your email messages, they start talking to people around you. And in the process of that, if you've done things that are wrong, they start to pop up. So as we lay out in our story today, there are different trips that Gaetz may have taken that the government is looking at. Did he try and take women with him to the Bahamas? Who was on those trips? It doesn't look like Greenberg was on those trips, but who was with him? And who were the people affiliated with him? And him being a young congressman in Florida, there were there donors that wanted to go with him. As we also talk about in the story today, there's an allegation the government has learned about ghost candidates in 2020 elections in Florida. That has no, there's no nexus between that and the sex trafficking. But that's a big issue down in Florida, where in state races, there are questions about whether Republicans tried to bring in third-party candidates to go on the ballot to take votes away from Democrats. So all of a sudden here, an investigation that started a year and a half ago about a local tax collector named Joel Greenberg and whether, he was stalking a political rival, or, he was taking money in his position as tax collector from Seminole County, is now this sprawling thing that could potentially spawn tentacles here and there and who knows where.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.